Poor widow and her children shelter in a cave, but something surprising appears. Rachel Thompson felt the weight of the world on her shoulders as she walked down the dirt road with her 5 children. She was only 28 years old, but the last few months of hardship had aged her young face, marking it with lines of worry that shouldn't have been there. It was when she spotted the cave among the reddish rocks that she decided to stop. The baby, Ethan, had been crying in her arms for over an hour, and the other 4 children dragged their tired feet. Emma, the eldest at just 10 years old, held the hand of little 5-year-old Noah, while the 7-year-old twins, Mason and Liam, walked clinging to each other. "Mummy, my feet hurt," murmured Emma, trying not to cry. Rachel looked at her daughter and felt her heart tighten. The girl's sandals were full of holes, revealing her dirty and injured toes. The boys didn't even have proper shoes, wearing only old flip-flops that were more of a hindrance than a help. "Let's rest there in that cave," said Rachel, pointing to the dark opening among the stones. "Just for today, my darlings." The sun was setting on the horizon, tinting the arid lands of the Arizona desert orange. Rachel had lost the house she was renting in Tucson 3 days ago, when the landlord lost patience with the late payments. Since her husband Michael left 2 years before, when he went to work on a construction site in New York and never gave any news, life had become a daily struggle for survival. As they approached the cave, Rachel noticed it was more spacious than it seemed from afar. The entrance measured about 3 meters high and 4 wide, offering safe shelter from the cold night wind that was approaching. "Stay here while I see if it's safe," she instructed her children, handing Ethan to Emma. Rachel cautiously entered the cave, using her cell phone as a flashlight to light the way. The device was almost out of battery, but it still worked. The cave was deeper than she had imagined, extending for several meters until a curve that was lost in the darkness. That's when she heard it. A low moan, almost imperceptible, coming from the back of the cave. Rachel stopped immediately, her heart racing. It could be a wounded animal or, worse yet, someone dangerous hiding there. But something about the quality of that sound seemed human, filled with pain and despair. "Is someone there?" she asked with a trembling voice. The silence lasted a few seconds before another moan, clearer this time, echoed off the stone walls. "Please, help," came a weak, hoarse voice. Rachel hesitated. All her maternal instincts screamed for her to grab her children and leave immediately. But the compassion that had always been her trademark spoke louder. Someone was suffering, and she couldn't simply ignore it. She advanced a few meters toward the voice, carefully lighting the way with her phone. Soon she spotted a human figure curled up against the back wall of the cave. It was a man of approximately 40 years, wearing clothes that had once been good, but were now torn and dirty with earth. He had graying brown hair and an unkempt beard that covered a face marked by pain. One of his legs was clearly injured, with torn pants revealing a deep cut that had bled profusely. "Are you okay?" asked Rachel, keeping a safe distance. The man lifted his head with difficulty, revealing clear blue eyes that shone with relief upon seeing her. "I fell from the rocks up there," he said in a weak voice. "I've been here for 3 days. I couldn't get out." Rachel observed the wound on the man's leg and realized he was truly in serious condition. Thirst and hunger had also taken their toll, leaving him visibly weakened. "I'm Rachel," she finally said. "I have my children with me. We need to shelter here tonight." "David," the man replied. "David. Davis. Thank you for stopping. I thought I was going to end right here." Rachel went back to fetch the children, who were anxiously waiting for her at the cave entrance. Worry was written all over Emma's little face as she tried to calm Ethan, while the twins argued quietly and Noah cried from exhaustion. "There's an injured man inside," Rachel explained. "He's hurt and needs help. We'll share the space with him tonight." Emma's eyes widened. "Mom, what if he's dangerous?" "He's not, sweetheart. He's too badly hurt to pose any danger. And besides," Rachel looked at her children affectionately, "we always help those in need, remember?" The children followed their mother into the cave, curious and fearful at the same time. David managed to sit up with difficulty when he saw them approaching. "Hi," he said, trying to smile to reassure the children. What a beautiful family. Noah hid behind his mother's skirt, but the twins observed him with interest. Emma remained serious, clearly suspicious of the situation. Rachel organized a small corner of the cave for the family, spreading on the ground the only blanket she had managed to bring in her bag of belongings. David stayed on the other side, respecting their space. "Mr. David," Emma said suddenly, pointing to the man's wrist. "That watch. It looks just like my dad's." Rachel looked in the direction her daughter pointed and felt a shiver run down her spine. Indeed, the gold watch on David's wrist was identical to the one Michael used to wear. Not just similar, identical, down to the details of the dial and the bracelet. "What a strange coincidence," murmured Rachel, moving closer to get a better look. David noticed their interest and looked at his own wrist as if he had forgotten he was wearing the watch. "Ah, yes. This one. It's a complicated story," he said, visibly uncomfortable. "How is it complicated?" asked Rachel, a suspicion beginning to form in her mind. David remained silent for a long moment, clearly debating internally whether to tell the truth or make up an excuse. "Your husband, what's his full name?" he finally asked. "Michael Thompson Davis." "Why?" David's face visibly paled, even in the dim light that entered the cave. "Michael Davis, from the transport company Davis and Associates?" Now it was Rachel's turn to pale. "How do you know that?" "Because I was his partner," replied David, lowering his head. "I'm David Davis. Michael was my brother." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The silence that followed was deafening. Rachel felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. The children, sensing the tension in the air, instinctively moved closer to her. "Your brother," repeated Rachel, her voice coming out as a strangled whisper. "Yes," confirmed David, still unable to look directly at her. "Michael never spoke of me." "Never," said Rachel, and the word was laden with an anger that was beginning to sprout in her chest. "He never mentioned having a brother, let alone a partner." David finally raised his eyes to her, and Rachel saw there a mixture of shame and remorse that left her even more confused. "We had a terrible fight many years ago," explained David, "because of family matters. When he decided to start the transport company, I offered money to be a partner. I thought it could be a start to reconciling." "And why did he never tell me about this?" asked Rachel, feeling suspicion grow within her. "Because when the company started having problems, I ran away. I abandoned him with all the debts and disappeared." The words fell like bombs in the silence of the cave. Rachel took a few seconds to fully process what she had heard. "You mean," she began, her voice trembling with contained anger. "You mean that when my husband needed you most, when our family was going through hardships, you just ran away?" "Rachel, I can explain I don't care about your explanation," exploded Rachel, standing up abruptly and startling the children. "Because of you, my husband had to leave here to work in New York. Because of you, he had to abandon his family." David tried to move, but the pain in his legs stopped him. He extended his hands in a pleading gesture. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I ruined everything. But you need to know that I lost everything too. I also suffered the consequences." "You suffered?" Rachel laughed bitterly. "You suffered. I waited 2 years for my husband to come back. 2 years raising 5 children alone, going without, losing the house." Emma began to cry softly, frightened by the argument. The twins hugged each other tighter and Noah hid his face in the blanket. Ethan, in his older sister's lap, also began to whimper. Rachel noticed the children's state and took a deep breath, trying to control herself. She couldn't take her anger out in front of her children, even though she wanted to scream at that man until she lost her voice. "Mommy, why are you mad?" asked Noah in a small voice. "It's nothing, my love," said Rachel, sitting back down and pulling her son close. "Mommy just got a little upset." David watched the scene with a heavy heart. He saw before him the destroyed family his cowardice had helped create. "Rachel," he said quietly, I know I can't undo what I did, but I can try to repair some of the damage." "How?" she asked, not hiding the sarcasm in her voice. "Michael's life insurance was never paid, because when he left for New York, the company was still in the process of bankruptcy. The creditors blocked everything, but I managed to hide an amount before they took it all." Rachel stared at him with distrust. "What amount?" "Enough for you to start over, enough for the children to have a better chance." "And why would I believe you? You've lied once, you could lie again." David struggled to take the watch off his wrist and held it out to her. "This watch belonged to our father. Michael and I each had one, exactly the same. When he left for New York, he asked me to keep his until he returned. That's why I have both." Rachel looked at the watch in David's hands, then at the one he had been wearing on his wrist. There really were two identical watches. "He never came back to get it," continued David, his voice choked, "and I never had the courage to look for you to return it. Until now." Night had fallen completely, and the cave was plunged into near total darkness. Rachel managed to find some dry twigs near the entrance, and using the lighter she always carried in her bag for emergencies, lit a small fire. The fire brought a little comfort to the tense environment. The children moved closer to the warmth, and David remained where he was, respecting the distance Rachel clearly wanted to keep. "Mommy, I'm hungry," murmured Mason, one of the twins. Rachel opened the bag of belongings and took out the little food that remained, half a stale loaf of bread, a small can of sardines, and a half-empty bottle of water. "Let's share this, okay?" she said, trying to sound cheerful so as not to worry the children further. David watched the meager division of food and felt even worse. 5 small children sharing half a loaf of bread and a few sardines. The guilt he had carried for years now weighed like a giant stone on his chest. "I won't eat," he said. "Leave all the food for the children." "You're hurt and weak," replied Rachel without looking at him. "You need strength to recover." "I don't deserve it." Rachel stopped what she was doing and stared directly at him for the first time since the revelation. "I don't deserve your kindness after what I did," explained David. "I deserve nothing but your contempt." "You're right," said Rachel coldly. "You don't deserve it. But these children have nothing to do with the war between adults. And I won't let anyone starve in front of me, even if it's the man who helped destroy my family." David received his small portion of food in silence, chewing each bite slowly, as if it were the most precious food in the world. After the frugal dinner, Rachel organized the children for sleep. Emma lay down with Ethan in her lap, while the 3 boys snuggled together under the blanket. The night chill was already beginning to be felt, and the small fire offered little warmth. "Mommy," Emma called softly, "tomorrow will we look for another place?" "Yes, my love. Tomorrow we'll continue our journey." "Where are we going?" Rachel hesitated. She had no answer to that question. They had no set destination, only the vague hope of finding some place where she could work and give a better life to her children. "We'll find a good place to live," she said finally. "Trust Mommy." Gradually the children fell asleep. The day's exhaustion had been so great that not even the cold and the hard cave floor could keep them awake. Rachel stayed awake, feeding the fire with small twigs and watching her children sleep. On the other side of the cave, David also couldn't close his eyes. "Rachel," he said softly, making sure the children wouldn't wake. She didn't answer, but he sensed she was listening. "I know you don't want to talk to me, but I need you to know one thing. Michael. He never gave up on you." Now Rachel looked at him. "How could you know that?" "Because before I disappeared, before everything fell apart, he talked about you all every day. He showed pictures of his kids to everyone at the office, said he was building that company to give a better life to his family." Rachel felt her eyes well up, but she didn't let the tears fall. "Then why did he never come back? Why did we never hear from him again?" David was silent for a long moment before answering. "Because he was ashamed. Ashamed of having failed, of not being able to protect you from the consequences of the company's bankruptcy. The last time I spoke to him, on the phone, he said he would only return when he had enough money to start over." "And did he?" "I don't know. We lost contact after that." But I know my brother. He would never have given up on you. If he hasn't returned yet, it's because something very serious happened." David's words brought a mixture of comfort and pain to Rachel. On one hand, it was comforting to know that Michael hadn't abandoned them because he stopped loving them. On the other hand, the possibility that something bad had happened to him was terrifying. "The money you mentioned earlier," said Rachel after a while. "How much is it?" "Enough for you to rent a simple house and support yourself and the children for a few months while you look for work. Maybe about 15,000 rees." Rachel's eyes widened. For her, who in recent months had survived on a few cents a day, 15,000 rees seemed like a fortune. "And where is this money?" "In a savings account in Miami. I managed to open the account using documents from a person who helped me when I was running from creditors." "Fake documents?" "It's complicated, but the money is there and it's real." Rachel processed the information. It was too good to be true, but at the same time it could be the salvation she so desperately needed. "Why would I believe you?" "Because you have no choice," replied David with brutal honesty. "And because I need to do this. I need to try to fix at least a small part of the damage I caused." The night was long and cold. Rachel dozed off a few times, but would wake up whenever she heard a noise or when the children stirred. David didn't sleep a minute, the pain in his leg and the weight of his conscience keeping him awake. When the first rays of sun began to enter the cave, Rachel woke up for good. The children were still asleep, enjoying the first warmer hours of the day. David tried to move and groaned in pain. The wound on his leg had worsened during the night, and he was visibly weaker. "You need medical attention," said Rachel, observing his condition. "I'll be fine." "No, you won't. That wound could get infected. And by the looks of you, you might have other internal injuries." David looked at her in surprise. "You care what happens to me?" Rachel took a moment to answer. "I care about any human being who is suffering. That doesn't mean I've forgiven you." "I understand." The children began to wake up one by one. Noah was the first, rubbing his little eyes and looking for his mother. Soon after, the twins woke up, followed by Emma, who immediately checked if Ethan was okay. "Good morning, children," said Rachel, trying to sound cheerful. "Who wants to wash their face at the spring I saw nearby?" There was a small spring of clean water about 50 meters from the cave. Rachel had discovered it the day before during her initial exploration of the area. While the children took turns washing up and drinking fresh water, Rachel took the opportunity to examine David's wound more closely. He had torn the hem of his shirt during the night and improvised a bandage, but the cut was still bleeding. "This needs to be cleaned properly," she said. "Don't worry about me." "I already told you. It's not for your sake. It's because I can't let someone get even more hurt in front of me." Rachel tore a piece of her own blouse to make a better bandage and used some of the spring water to clean the wound. David bit his lip to keep from groaning in pain during the procedure. "You said you fell from the rocks," Rachel commented as she worked. "How did that happen?" "I was running." "From whom?" David hesitated before answering. "From the company's creditors. They found me in Flagstaff, where I was trying to start over. I came to hide out here in the middle of nowhere, but I slipped on a loose rock and fell." "And they're still after you?" "Probably. The debt was never settled." Rachel finished the bandage and stepped back. "How much do you owe?" "Much more than I could pay in several lifetimes." When the children returned from the spring, they were more cheerful. The fresh water and sunlight had lifted everyone's spirits. "Mom, look at that beautiful butterfly," exclaimed Noah, pointing to a colorful butterfly flying near the cave entrance. "It really is beautiful," agreed Rachel, smiling for the first time since the night before. Emma approached David curiously. "Mr. David, are you really our uncle?" "Yes, I am, Emma." "Uncle David, why did you never come visit us?" The girl's innocent question hit David like a stab. He looked at Rachel, silently asking for help to answer. "Because Uncle David had a fight with Daddy a long time ago," Rachel explained carefully. "Sometimes adults do wrong things and drift away from family." "But can they be friends again now?" asked Mason. "I don't know, son. That depends on many things." David watched the children playing near the cave entrance and felt his heart tighten. They were his nephews, his brother's children, and he had never had the chance to meet them before this strange situation. "Rachel," he said softly, "can I ask you something?" She nodded. "Michael, was he a good father?" Rachel's face softened a little when speaking of her husband. "The best father you could imagine. He played with them every day, told stories before bed, took them fishing at the river on weekends. They adored him. And a husband? Also the best. He never raised his voice at me, never disrespected me. He worked hard but always made time for the family." David lowered his head, feeling the weight of guilt even more. "I was jealous of him," he confessed. "Always was. Michael had everything I wanted, a beautiful family, people's respect, success in what he did." "Is that why you fought?" "No, we fought for another reason, much sillier and much more painful." Rachel waited for him to continue, but David remained silent. Around noon, the heat inside the cave became suffocating. The children were restless and hungry again. Rachel looked at the empty food bag and felt desperation tighten her throat. "I'll look for something for us to eat," she announced. "Mom, can I come with you?" asked Emma. "No, sweetheart. You stay here looking after your little brothers." "Rachel, wait," called David. "In my backpack there are some cereal bars. It's not much, but it might help." She found David's backpack in a depression in the cave wall and took out 3 packaged cereal bars. It wasn't enough to satisfy the hunger of 6 people, but it would be better than nothing. "I'm still going out," said Rachel. "I need to find something more substantial." "Don't go too far. This area can be dangerous." Rachel left the cave under the scorching midday sun. The arid landscape stretched in all directions, with small hardy shrubs and cacti scattered among the rocks. She didn't have much hope of finding food, but she had to try. After walking for about 15 minutes, she spotted a small abandoned cassava plot. Some roots were still good, hidden under the parched earth. Rachel dug with her hands, getting completely dirty, but managing to gather some tubers that could be cooked. Further on, she also found some ripe mandakaru fruits. They weren't very nutritious, but they would quench thirst and give the children some natural sugar. When she returned to the cave, she found David telling stories to the children, who were sitting in a circle around him. It was the first time she had seen her children smiling since they had left home. And then the clever rabbit said to the fox, "If you let me go, I'll teach you where to find a chicken coop full of fat chickens." David did different voices for each character, eliciting giggles from the children. Rachel stopped at the cave entrance, watching the scene. For a few seconds, she forgot all the anger and resentment, seeing only a man trying to bring joy to children who had been through so much suffering. "Mommy's back!" exclaimed Noah, running to hug Rachel's legs. "I brought real food," she announced, showing the cassava and the fruits. "But can we eat that raw?" asked Liam. "We'll make a bigger fire and cook the cassava," explained Rachel, "and the fruits we can eat as they are." David tried to help organize the fire, but Rachel stopped him. "You stay put there. With that injured leg, you'll just get in the way." "Let me help at least a little. I feel useless just sitting here. You can peel the fruits then, but don't move from that spot." While the cassava cooked over the makeshift fire, the children ate the prickly pear fruits. The sweet, refreshing taste was a joy after so long without fruit. "Uncle David," Emma said suddenly, "why did you and Dad fight?" David stopped peeling the fruits and looked at Rachel, who also wanted to hear the answer. "It's a very complicated story for children, Emma. I'm already 10. I'm not a little kid anymore." David sighed deeply. "Your father and I liked the same person a long time ago, and when that person chose him over me, I got very hurt and said horrible things." Emma stared at him with curiosity. "You liked Mom?" The silence that followed was heavy with tension. Rachel stopped stirring the cassava over the fire and stared intently at David. "Yes," he finally admitted, "we liked your mum." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. David's words echoed in the cave like stones thrown into still water. Rachel felt her face burn, not just from the heat of the fire, but from the unexpected revelation. You liked me?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. "Very much," replied David, unable to look directly at her. "Since we were teenagers, but you only ever saw Michael, and he was always better than me at everything." The children sensed the tension in the air, even without fully understanding what was happening. Emma looked back and forth between her mother and her uncle, trying to decipher the situation. "Is that why you fought?" the girl insisted. "That's why I left," David corrected. "The day your father told me he was going to ask your mother to marry him, I said very ugly things to him, things one brother should never say to another." Rachel stirred the cassava in the fire more forcefully than necessary. "And then? Why did you come back to be his partner at the firm?" "Because I thought I had gotten over it. I thought I could be around you all without suffering. But when I saw you married with the children being a perfect family, the jealousy came back. And when the firm started having problems, I used that as an excuse to run away again." "An excuse?" Rachel turned to him, her eyes blazing with anger. "You destroyed our lives because of an excuse?" "Rachel, please, no," she stood up abruptly. "You have no idea what you did. Because of your sick obsession, my children went hungry. We lost our home. Michael had to leave and never came back." The children were frightened by their mother's raised tone. Ethan began to cry in Emma's lap, and the boys hugged each other, fearful. "I'm sorry, my darlings," said Rachel, noticing the children's fright and struggling to control her voice. Mum got a little upset. She took the cassava off the fire and began to distribute it among the children, her hands trembling slightly with contained anger. David remained silent, knowing any word could make the situation even worse. He refused his portion of food, claiming he wasn't hungry. After the improvised lunch, the mood in the cave became heavy and uncomfortable. The children noticed the change in their mother's mood and grew quieter, playing in whispers near the entrance. Rachel organized the few belongings they had, clearly preparing to leave. "Are you leaving?" asked David. "We can't stay here forever, and honestly, I don't want to be around you anymore." "And where will you go?" "That's not your problem." David tried to stand up, leaning against the cave wall. "Rachel, wait. At least let me give you the information about the money before you go." She stopped what she was doing. "What information?" "The account number, the branch, where the bank is, how to access the money." Rachel hesitated. As much as she hated to admit it, she needed that money. It was the difference between continuing in misery or having a real chance to start over. "Fine, tell me." David took a crumpled piece of paper from his pants pocket and a pen that barely worked. "Rural Bank, branch 1524, savings account 3332874. The account name is Joseph Davis Miller." He wrote the numbers with difficulty. "To access it, you need to bring an ID and say you're his daughter. I left a power of attorney there, saying that if anything happened to me, my daughter could withdraw the money." "ID, but my name doesn't match." "That's why you'll need a fake ID. I know a person in Tucson who can arrange that for you." Rachel looked at the paper with suspicion. "And why should I believe this isn't another lie?" David took a chain from his neck, from which hung a small key. "This is the key to the safe where I kept a copy of all the documents. The safe is in a guest house in Miami, room 15. If you don't trust the information I gave, you can go there and check." Rachel took the key and examined it. It was small and simple, the kind used for small safes or lockers. "What's the guest house called?" "St. Joseph's Guest House, at 234 Flower Street. The owner is Mrs. Severine, a lady over 60, very honest. You can trust her." "And she'll just let me into the room like that?" "Tell her you're my cousin and that I asked you to pick up some of my things. I already arranged with her that a relative might show up." Rachel put the paper and the key in her bag, still suspicious of the whole story. "If this is a lie—" "It's not a lie, I swear on our father's memory." Something in the way David said those words made Rachel believe he was telling the truth, at least about the money. "Let's go then," she announced to the children. "But, Mom," protested Noah, "what about Uncle David? We're not going to leave him here alone and hurt, are we?" The boy's innocent question hit Rachel hard. As furious as she was with David, abandoning a wounded man in a cave in the middle of nowhere was beyond what her conscience allowed. Uncle David is an adult, son. He knows how to take care of himself. But what if he can't get out of here? What if no one else finds him? Emma also joined her brother. Mum, you always taught us that we should help those in need. Uncle David needs help. David listened to the conversation and intervened. Noah, Emma, your mum is right. I'll be fine. You go and take care of your mum. We don't want to leave you, said Mason, surprising everyone. Why? Asked David, touched by the children's concern. Because you tell cool stories, and because you're our uncle. Rachel's internal conflict was written all over her face. The rational part of her mind told her to leave and never look back. But the human part, the part that always put compassion above all else, couldn't abandon someone in need. For God's sake, she murmured, running her hands through her hair. All right. You can come with us until we get somewhere you can receive medical attention. I don't want to be a burden to you. You already are from the moment you appeared in our lives. Now get up from there and let's go before I change my mind. David tried to get up on his own, but his injured leg couldn't bear the weight. He staggered and would have fallen if Rachel hadn't instinctively supported him. I'm going to have to support you, she said reluctantly. Emma, you hold Ethan. Mason and Liam, you carry the bag. Noah, you stay close to me. They left the cave under the midday sun. David limped heavily, leaning on Rachel's shoulder, who strained to support him. The children walked in a line, Emma caring for the baby, while the boys took turns carrying their few belongings. The walk was slow and painful. Every few meters David needed to stop to rest, sweating profusely under the scorching sun. Rachel began to wonder if it wouldn't have been better to leave him in the cave. How far is it to the nearest town? She asked. About 15 kilometers, replied David between gasps. 15 kilometers. At this pace it will take us all day. I can try to go faster. No, you can't. You'll hurt yourself even more. They continued their arduous walk. The children were beginning to complain of tiredness when they spotted a small property in the distance. It was a simple house with a clay tile roof surrounded by a cornfield. Let's ask for help there, decided Rachel. As they approached the property, an elderly man with white hair came out to greet them. He wore simple farm worker's clothes, and his face was weathered by the sun. Good afternoon, the man greeted. What can I do for you? Good afternoon, sir. We have an injured man here and we need to get to town. Could you help us? The man observed the group's condition. Rachel, dirty and tired, supporting David, who was clearly in very bad shape, the 5 children exhausted and with dusty clothes. Mercy me, of course I can help. My name is Mr. Raymond. Come inside the house. The house was simple but clean and cozy. Mr. Raymond called his wife, Mrs. Constance, a short and kind lady who immediately sprang into action to care for everyone. Good heavens, what happened to you all? Asked Mrs. Constance, observing the group's state. It's a long story, replied Rachel, but we really need to get to town to take care of this injury. Mrs. Constance examined David's leg and shook her head worriedly. This looks bad, you know. He really needs a doctor. Raymond, get the pickup truck. I'll take you right now, said Mr. Raymond. But first, let Constance take care of the children. They need food and water. Mrs. Constance was already in action, offering fresh water to everyone and quickly preparing a snack of bread, butter and milk for the children. We don't know how to thank you, said Rachel, moved by the couple's generosity. No need to thank us, dear. We always help those in need. That's how God wants it. While the children ate and drank, Mr. Raymond observed David more closely. You're not from around here, are you? No, I'm from Miami, but I've traveled around a lot. And you, ma'am? He asked Rachel. From Tucson. We're traveling. Mr. Raymond sensed there was more to the story, but he was tactful enough not to press. He simply nodded and went to get the keys to the pickup truck. Mrs. Constance, said David with difficulty, could you do a favor for me? Of course, son. If anyone comes here looking for me, don't tell them you saw me, okay? Mrs. Constance exchanged a worried look with her husband. Are you in trouble, young man? Let's say I am, but I'm not dangerous. I just owe money to people who aren't very patient. I understand. Don't worry. Nobody here saw anything. The trip to the town of Prescott took about 40 minutes in Mr. Raymond's old pickup truck. The children fell asleep during the journey, exhausted by the difficult day. David went directly to the municipal hospital, where he was seen by a young doctor who carefully examined his injury. "You'll need stitches and antibiotics," said the doctor. "The wound is starting to get infected. If you had waited a few more days, it could have been serious." While David received medical care, Rachel stayed in the waiting room with the children. Mr. Raymond had offered to wait too, but she insisted he return home. "You've already done so much for us," she said. "We don't want to be more of a bother." "And where will you stay tonight?" Rachel hesitated. She had no money to pay for a guest house, and she didn't know anyone in the city. "We'll figure something out," she said finally. Mr. Raymond sensed the situation and scratched his head thoughtfully. "Look, my dear, I have a brother here in the city who runs a small guest house. It's simple but clean. Let me talk to him." Before Rachel could protest, Mr. Raymond was already dialing a number on the hospital reception phone. "Hello, Anthony. It's Raymond." "Yes, my brother. Listen, I have some friends here who need a place to spend the night, but they're short on money at the moment." "That's right. Don't worry. I'll guarantee it." "Okay then." He hung up and smiled at Rachel. "All set. Anthony said he can put you up for tonight. Tomorrow you can figure out what to do." "But I can't accept this. You've already done so much for us." "You can accept it, and when life gets better, you help someone else in need. That's how the world works, dear." 2 hours later, David came out of medical care with his leg properly cleaned and stitched. He was stronger after receiving fluids and medication. "How are you feeling?" asked Rachel. "Much better. The doctor said in a few days I'll be able to walk normally." They went to the guest house of Anthony, Mr. Raymond's brother. It was a small 2-story building, simple but well kept. Anthony resembled his brother, an elderly man with a good heart who welcomed them without asking questions. "You can stay in room 7, he said, handing over a simple key. "There are 2 single beds and a mattress on the floor. It's not luxury, but it's clean and safe." The room was small but cozy. The children were excited to see real beds after 2 nights on the cave floor. "Mommy, can I take a bath?" asked Emma. "Of course, sweetheart. You're all going to take a bath and put on the cleanest clothes we have." While the children took turns in the bathroom, Rachel and David talked in the room. "Tomorrow I'm going to Miami to get that money," she said. "Alone?" "Alone. The children will stay here with you." "Rachel, it's dangerous. You don't know the city. You don't know how this kind of business works." "I'll have to learn. I have no choice." David was thoughtful for a moment. "What if I go with you? I know the city. I know where everything is." "You said you have creditors looking for you there." "I do. But if we're quick, we get in and out without anyone noticing." Rachel considered the proposal. It really would be safer to have someone who knew Miami to guide her. "And the children?" "They can stay with Mr. Anthony for a few hours. He seems like a good person." "I don't like the idea of leaving my children with strangers." "I understand. But think about it. If we get that money, you can give them a much better life. It's worth the risk." Rachel lay awake all night, thinking about the decision she had to make. It was a risky bet to trust David once more, but it was also the only real chance she had to escape poverty. In the morning, after a simple coffee offered by Mr. Anthony, she made her decision. "We'll go to Miami, but with some conditions." "What conditions?" "First, if this is a lie, if you're deceiving me, I swear I'll find a way to make you pay. Second, during the trip you don't talk about the past, about Michael, about anything personal. Third, after we get the money, we each go our separate ways." "I agree to everything." Mr. Anthony offered to look after the children during the day and assured them they would be safe at the guest house. "Don't worry," he said. "I have grandchildren their age. I know how to take care of them." Saying goodbye to the children was hard. Emma was especially worried. "Mommy, will you be back today?" "We will, my love. We'll be back before nightfall. Promise? I promise." The bus trip to Miami took 3 hours. David knew the route well and pointed out landmarks to Rachel along the way. During the journey, they maintained a polite but distant conversation, respecting their agreement not to discuss personal matters. In Miami, they caught another bus to Flower Street. St. Joseph's Guest House was an old 3-story building painted in faded blue. Mrs. Severine, the owner, was exactly as David had described, a woman of about 65, with greying hair and a gentle smile. "David!" she exclaimed upon seeing him. "My boy, you've gotten so thin. And who is this lovely young lady?" "This is my cousin Rachel," said David, sticking to the plan. "She came to help me fetch some things from the room." "Oh, wonderful. Go on up, dear. Room 15, you know where it is." The room was small and Spartan, with just a single bed, a table, and an old wardrobe. David went straight to a small safe hidden behind the wardrobe. Rachel used the key he had given her and opened the safe. Inside were several documents, including bank statements confirming the existence of the savings account and the deposited amount. Exactly 15,400 Rs. "It wasn't a lie," she murmured, surprised. "I told you it wasn't." There was also a copy of the power of attorney mentioned by David, indeed allowing a supposed daughter to withdraw the money if needed. "Now we need to get the fake ID," said David. "How?" "I know someone downtown. A bit, let's say, not entirely above board, but reliable for this kind of service." They went to downtown Miami, to a busier area where David clearly felt uncomfortable. He kept looking over his shoulder, afraid of being recognized. "It's there," he said, pointing to a small stationery shop. They entered the shop, which looked ordinary from the outside. The owner was a short, portly man with a thick mustache and thick glasses. "David," the man said, surprised, "I thought you were dead." "Not yet, Mr. Joshua. I need a favor." "What kind of favor?" "An ID for her, daughter of Joseph Davis Miller, born in 1995. Mr. Joshua looked Rachel up and down. "It'll cost 300 Rs. "We don't have that money," said Rachel. "Then no ID." David thought for a moment. "Mr. Joshua, here's the deal. Make the document now, and when she withdraws the money from the bank, she'll come back here and pay." "And if she doesn't come back? Then you can have me killed. You know I pay my debts." Mr. Joshua laughed at the answer. "All right, but only because you're an old customer." Half an hour later, Rachel held in her hands a fake ID card with the name Rachel Davis Miller, daughter of Joseph Davis Miller. The document was well made, almost indistinguishable from a real one. "Now we just go to the bank," said David. The rural bank was just a few blocks from the shop. Rachel was nervous but tried to hide it. It was the first time in her life she had done something illegal, even if it was to feed her children. At the bank, she was assisted by a young teller who examined the documents without suspicion. "You wish to withdraw the entire account balance?" "Yes, please." "That will be 15,400 Rs. How would you like it?" "In cash, please." The teller prepared the money and asked Rachel to sign a receipt. When she left the bank with the envelope full of money, Rachel could hardly believe it had worked. "We did it," she said to David, still in shock. "We did it." They returned to Mr. Joshua's shop, where Rachel paid the promised 300 Rs. Then they went straight to the bus terminal, anxious to get back to the children. During the return trip, Rachel clutched the bag with the money, still processing what had happened. "What are you going to do now?" asked David. "I'm going to rent a house somewhere, put the kids in school, look for work." "And where do you plan to settle?" "I don't know yet. Maybe I'll go back to Tucson. Or maybe I'll look for some new place where nobody knows us." David was silent for a long time before speaking again. "Rachel, I know you don't want to hear it, but I need to say one thing. If it's about the past, I already said I don't want. It's about the future. About you and the kids." She looked at him curiously. "What do you mean?" 15,000 Rs is a good start, but it won't last forever. You'll need a job, and a job that pays enough to support 5 kids isn't easy to find." "I know that. I'll figure it out." "What if I offered you a partnership?" Rachel stared at him with distrust. "What kind of partnership?" "I understand business. You understand taking care of people. We could open something together. A guest house, a small restaurant. Something like that, May?" "No way. Why not?" Because I don't trust you, and because I don't want to mix my life with yours again. David nodded sadly. I understand. But if you change your mind, I won't change it. They arrived back in Prescott in the late afternoon. The children were overjoyed to see their mother back, jumping into her arms and telling her everything they had done during the day. Mr. Anthony taught us how to play dominoes, said Mason. And he let me help in the kitchen, said Emma. And there's a cat here that's really cute, added Noah. Rachel smiled, relieved to see her children well and happy. That night she gathered the children in the room to talk about the next steps. Tomorrow we're going to look for a place to live, she announced. A place of our own where you can go to school and have a normal life. What about Uncle David? Asked Liam. Rachel looked at David, who was sitting in a chair in the corner of the room. Uncle David is going to go his own way. But I like Uncle David, protested Noah. Me too, said Mason. And me too, added Emma. Rachel sighed. The children had grown attached to their uncle during the few days they'd spent together, and she knew the separation would be painful for them. Sometimes people need to go different ways, she explained patiently. That doesn't mean we don't like each other. David listened to the conversation with a heavy heart. In just a few days, he had discovered what it was like to have a family, and now he was about to lose it all again. Can I say something? He asked. Rachel hesitated but nodded. Kids, you know Uncle David did wrong things in the past, right? They confirmed with nods. And you know your mom is right not to trust me? Again, they confirmed. Then understand that she's doing what's best for you, and I also want what's best for you. That's why I'm going to stay away, so you can have a good life without the problems I bring along. Emma approached him. But Uncle David, can't you try to be a better person? The girl's innocent question hit David like a punch. I can try, yes, and I will try. But that doesn't mean your mom has to give me another chance. Why not? Because when we hurt someone very deeply, sometimes there's no way to fix it, Emma. And that's okay, it's part of life. That night, while the children slept, Rachel and David talked on the small terrace of the guest house. Where will you go? She asked. I still don't know. Maybe I'll go back to Flagstaff, maybe I'll look for another place. And the creditors? I'll try to negotiate with them. In time, maybe I can pay off the debt. They were silent for a while, looking at the stars in the clear Arizona desert sky. David, said Rachel finally, thank you for the money. I know it doesn't erase what happened, but thank you. You don't have to thank me. It's the least I could do. And thank you for helping with the kids these past few days. They liked you. I like them too. They're great kids. Michael and you did a good job. Rachel felt her eyes well up, thinking of her missing husband. Do you think that he's okay? Michael is strong and stubborn. If there's anyone in the world capable of surviving anything, it's my brother. Then why hasn't he come back? David was thoughtful before answering. Maybe out of pride. Maybe because he doesn't want to come back empty-handed. Or maybe... Maybe what? Maybe he's afraid you won't forgive him for leaving. Rachel wiped a tear that ran down her face. Of course we'd forgive him. He's the children's father, my husband. We'll always forgive him. He doesn't know that. The next morning, the time for goodbyes arrived. Rachel had decided to go to Tucson, where she knew some people who could help her find work. The children said goodbye to David with tight hugs and promises they wouldn't forget him. Uncle David, do you promise you'll try to be a good person? Asked Noah. I promise, little one. And do you promise you won't make any more people sad? I promise that too. Emma was the last to say goodbye. Uncle David, if one day you become a really, really good person, can you come visit us? David looked at Rachel, who nodded discreetly. If one day I manage to become someone you can be proud of, maybe yes. Then I'll really hope you can do it. David watched the family leave in Mr. Raymond's pickup truck, who had offered to take them back to Tucson. He stood in the doorway of the guest house until the vehicle disappeared down the dirt road, taking with it the only family he had known in years. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. 3 months later, Rachel had managed to rent a small but comfortable house on the outskirts of Tucson. With the money David had given her, she was able to pay the rent in advance, buy basic furniture and keep the children fed and properly clothed. Emma and the boys were enrolled in a nearby public school and adapting well. Ethan, now a year and a few months old, was more developed and healthy. Rachel had found work at a neighborhood bakery where she worked from 4 in the morning. She didn't earn much, but it was enough to supplement the money that remained and support the family. Life had found a stable routine, but there was a constant feeling of incompleteness. Michael was still missing, and the children asked about their father and about Uncle David regularly. It was on a Thursday afternoon that Rachel received an unexpected visitor. She was preparing dinner when she heard a soft knock at the door. Emma went to answer and came back with wide eyes. "Mum, there's a man here who says he knows Mr. David." Rachel dried her hands on her apron and went to the door. Outside was a middle-aged man, well-dressed, with a serious but respectful air. "Good afternoon, I'm Anthony Mitchell, an attorney. Are you Rachel Thompson?" "Yes, I am. How can I help you?" "It's about David Davis. He asked me to deliver this to you." The lawyer handed a sealed envelope to Rachel. "Is David okay?" she asked, accepting the envelope. "He is. In fact, he's much better than he's been in recent years." "What do you mean?" "It's better if you read the letter. Everything is explained there." The lawyer politely said goodbye and left, leaving Rachel curious and apprehensive. She called the children to the living room and opened the envelope in front of them. The letter was written in David's careful handwriting. "Dear Rachel and dear children, I hope you are all well and that life in Tucson is treating you kindly. I need to share some important things that have happened since we said goodbye. First, I managed to settle everything with the creditors. It wasn't easy, but I found a way to pay off the entire company debt. I'm now free from that burden I carried for years. Second, and more importantly, I have news about Michael. Rachel, your husband did not leave because he didn't love you. He left because he discovered he was ill and didn't want you to see him waste away. Michael has diabetes, and when the company went bankrupt, he had no money for proper treatment. The disease was out of control. He went to New York, not just to work, but to try to get treatment at the General Hospital, where there is free care for serious cases. During these 2 years, he went through many difficult moments, but always with the hope of getting better and returning home. I found Michael a month ago, when I went to New York to look for him. He is well with his diabetes under control and has been working at a logistics company. He has saved enough money to return home with dignity. The problem is that he is afraid that you won't forgive him for lying about the illness, afraid that the children won't remember him anymore, afraid that Rachel has moved on without him. I talked a lot with my brother during these weeks. I told him about our meeting in the cave, about how you treated me kindly even though I didn't deserve it, about how wonderful the children are. I also spoke about the strength and dignity you showed, Rachel, taking care of the family alone. Michael really wants to come back, but he doesn't have the courage. That's why I'm writing this letter. If you want to see him, he will be at the Tucson bus terminal next Sunday at 3 p.m. on the bus arriving from New York. If you don't show up, he will understand that it's better to leave things as they are. The decision is entirely yours. I also want to say that these months away have made me reflect a lot on the kind of person I was and the kind of person I want to be. You taught me in just a few days more about family and love than I had learned in 40 years of life. I started therapy to deal with the envy and resentment I carried. I also started volunteer work at an organization that helps homeless families. It's not much, but it's a start to try to repair some of the harm I've done in the world. Rachel, I know you said everyone should follow their own path, and I respect that. But I want you to know that I will always be rooting for you. I will always wish you happiness. And if you ever need anything at all, you can look for me. Emma, keep being that responsible and caring girl who takes such good care of her little brothers. Mason and Liam, keep supporting each other as you do so well. Noah, keep asking smart questions about everything. And Ethan, grow up strong and healthy. A kiss full of affection and longing. Uncle David, P.S. In the envelope is an address where you can find me in case you want to talk about Michael or about anything else. When Rachel finished reading the letter aloud, There were tears in everyone's eyes. The children fell silent for a few seconds, processing the information that their father was alive and wanted to come back. "Mommy," Emma finally said, "is Daddy coming back?" "If we want him to, my love." "And do we want to?" Rachel looked at her children, seeing hope shining in all their eyes. "What about you? Do you want to see Daddy?" "Yes," they all shouted in unison, including Ethan, who didn't exactly understand what was happening but felt his siblings' joy. "Then we'll go to the terminal on Sunday." The next few days passed in a mix of anxiety and anticipation. The children could hardly concentrate in school, thinking only about reuniting with their father. Rachel alternated between the joy of knowing Michael was alive and well and worry about how the reunion would be after 2 years of separation. On Sunday morning, the whole family dressed in the best clothes they had. Rachel carefully combed the girls' hair and cut the boys' hair. She wanted Michael to see how beautiful and healthy the children had grown. "Mummy, what if Daddy doesn't recognize me?" asked Noah. "I was really little when he left." "He will recognize you, my love. A father never forgets his children." "And if he doesn't want to live with us anymore?" asked Mason. "Then we'll continue our life as it is now. We're okay, aren't we?" "We are," the children agreed, but it was clear they all had the same fear. They arrived at the Tucson bus terminal an hour before the scheduled time. Such was their anxiety. Rachel bought popcorn for the children, and they waited in the arrivals area. When the bus from New York finally arrived, Rachel's heart raced. The children all stood in a little line, Emma holding Ethan in her arms. Passengers began to disembark. Elderly people, young people, families. And then Rachel saw him. Michael looked thinner than she remembered, and there was more grey hair on his head. He wore simple but clean clothes and carried only a small suitcase. When his eyes met the family, he stopped as if in shock. For a few seconds, no one moved. Michael looked at the family as if he couldn't believe they were really there. Rachel looked at her husband, noticing the changes that the years and the illness had brought. It was Emma who broke the spell. "Daddy!" she shouted, dropping Ethan into her mother's arms and running toward her father. Michael dropped his suitcase and opened his arms, receiving his daughter in a desperate hug. Then the other boys ran too, and Michael knelt to hug all his children at once. Rachel approached slowly, still processing the moment. Michael looked up and saw her coming toward him carrying Ethan. "Rachel," he said, his voice choked. "Michael." They stood still, facing each other, with the children still hugging their father. Do you forgive me?" asked Michael. "For what? For being sick? For trying to take care of yourself? For wanting to come home healed?" "For lying. For leaving without explaining. For leaving you all alone all this time." Rachel stepped closer and held Ethan out to him. "Meet your youngest son properly. When you left, he was just crawling." Michael took Ethan in his arms with trembling hands. The boy, now almost 2 years old, observed him curiously before smiling and babbling, "Daddy." "He knows who I am?" asked Michael, moved. "I show him your picture every day," replied Rachel. "Everyone knows who you are." Michael looked at his wife again. "David told me you went through very difficult times. He told me about the cave, about how you took care of the children alone, about... Did David also tell you that he helped us?" "He did, and he asked for my forgiveness for abandoning me when I needed him most." "And did you forgive him?" Michael thought about the answer. "I did. He did wrong things, but he's trying to make amends. And besides, he took care of my family when I wasn't here. That counts for a lot." Rachel smiled for the first time since she saw him getting off the bus. "Then come home, Michael. Come see the life we built while you were away. Come see how your children have grown. Come see how we endured and how we grew stronger." The reunion was emotional and natural at the same time. Michael fit back into the family routine as if he had never left. He told stories about New York, about the medical treatment, about the work he had found there. The children bombarded him with questions about everything: if he had met other children in New York, if he had seen very tall buildings, if he had ridden the subway. "Daddy," asked Noah during dinner, "I won't get sick anymore. I'll always have diabetes, my son, but now I know how to take care of it properly. I take my medicine right on time, I exercise, I eat healthy foods. The disease doesn't control me anymore. And you won't leave again? Michael looked at Rachel before answering. Only if you don't want me to stay. We do, said Emma. We really want you to stay forever. Then I'll stay forever. That night, after the children had fallen asleep, Michael and Rachel talked on the porch of the house. How are you financially? He asked. Better than when you left. David gave us some money that helped us a lot. I managed to rent this house, put the children in school. I have a job at the bakery. David told me about the money. It was part of the settlement I was entitled to from the company. Oh, so it wasn't his generosity. Yes, it was, because he could have kept that money for himself. Instead, he decided to give it to you. Michael told her about his 2 years in New York, about the moments when he almost gave up on everything, about how missing his family kept him strong. You don't know how many times I picked up the phone to call you, he said. How many times I stood at the bus terminal with the return ticket in my hand but didn't have the courage to come back. Why didn't you have the courage? Because I was ashamed. Ashamed of having hidden the illness, ashamed of having failed as the family provider, ashamed of coming back without having achieved the victory I wanted. What victory? I wanted to come back rich, prosperous, able to give you a life of luxury. I wanted to prove I could overcome any obstacle. Rachel took his hand. Michael, you don't understand. We don't need luxury. We need you. We've always only needed you. Now I understand. It took me a while, but I understand. They stayed silent for a time, just enjoying the closeness they had lost for so long. David said you're different, commented Rachel. That you're in therapy, working as a volunteer. He really is. I think meeting you in the cave changed him. He told me that for the first time in his life, he understood what a real family means. The children liked him a lot. They always ask when they'll see him again. And you? Would you like to see him again? Rachel thought about the answer. I think so. Not to be friends, but so he knows he managed to redeem himself, at least a little. Maybe we can invite him for lunch next Sunday, what do you think? I think the children would be very happy. The next day, Michael went looking for work in Tucson. With his experience in transport and logistics, he quickly got a job at a distribution company. The salary was good, enough for Rachel to leave her job at the bakery if she wanted. I don't want to leave, she said. I like the work, and the extra money will help us save to buy our own house. Are you sure? I am. Besides, I want the children to see that both their father and mother work and strive for the family. Michael agreed, proud of his wife's strength and determination. At the end of the week, they called David using the number that was in the letter. His joy upon learning that Michael had returned and that the family was reunited was evident even over the phone. You don't know how happy I am, said David. Michael called me telling me about the reunion, but I really wanted to talk to you too. Uncle David, shouted Emma, who had taken the phone from her mother, when are you coming to visit us? Whenever you want, my dear. Sunday. Come have lunch with us on Sunday. Ethan accepted the invitation with emotion. The following Sunday, he arrived at the family's house carrying simple but meaningful gifts for each child. Storybooks, educational toys, special candies. The meeting between the two brothers was moving. They embraced for a long time, asking each other for forgiveness for years of hurt and misunderstandings. Thank you for taking care of my family, said Michael. Thank you for forgiving me and giving me the chance to meet my nephews and nieces, replied David. During lunch, David talked about the changes in his life. He was living in a simple guest house in Miami, working as an accountant at a small company, and dedicating his weekends to volunteer work. And you? Are you happy? Asked Rachel. I am at peace, replied David. For the first time in many years, I sleep well at night. I don't have that weight on my conscience anymore. The children bombarded their uncle with stories about school, friends, and plans for the future. David listened to everything attentively, asking questions and showing genuine interest. Uncle David, said Noah, now that Dad is back and you've become a good person, our family is complete. What do you mean complete, son? Well, we have Dad, Mom, and an uncle. just like my friends' families at school who have a grandpa and grandma. David looked at Michael and Rachel, moved by the child's simplicity. It's true, Noah. Now our family is complete. From that Sunday on, David began visiting the family regularly, always on Sundays, always bringing some little gift for the children, always helping where he could. Months later, when Michael and Rachel managed to save enough money to buy their own house, David insisted on helping with part of the amount. "It's not a loan," he said. "It's a gift. Consider it a belated wedding gift." "David, we can't accept this," protested Rachel. "Yes, you can. It's my way of apologizing for all the years I stole from you." The new house was simple, but it had 3 bedrooms, a spacious living room, and a backyard where the children could play. It was the first home the family had ever owned. On moving day, David showed up with a rented pickup truck to help transport the furniture. He worked all day carrying boxes and furniture, sweating under the hot sun, but with a constant smile on his face. "Why are you so happy?" asked Emma, seeing her uncle smile while carrying the refrigerator. "Because I'm helping the family have a real home," replied David, "and because I'm becoming part of this family." "You were always part of our family, Uncle, even when you were far away." "Really?" "Yes. We always hoped you were doing well, even when we didn't know where you were." David stopped what he was doing and hugged his niece. "Thank you for teaching me what forgiveness means, Emma. Mom taught me. She said holding on to anger in your heart only makes you sad." That night, in the new house, the whole family had dinner together for the first time. Michael at the head of the table, Rachel beside him, the 5 children distributed in the remaining chairs, and David completing the circle. "Let's make a toast," said Michael, raising his glass of soda. "To what?" asked Rachel. "To family, to second chances, to forgiveness, and to the caves that teach us that sometimes we need to hide from the storm to discover who we really are." "To our family," they all toasted together. David looked around the table, seeing the children's smiling faces, Rachel's expression of contentment, Michael's genuine joy. He couldn't believe he had almost lost all this because of pride and envy. "Can I say something?" he asked. "Of course," said Michael. "That cave was the best place I have ever been in my entire life, because that's where I learned what truly matters." "And what truly matters, Uncle David?" asked Mason. David smiled, looking at each person around the table. "Family, love, forgiveness, and the courage to try to be a better person every day." "Then let's always try to be better people," said Noah. "Let's," agreed David. "I promise I will." And he kept his promise. In the years that followed, David became the uncle every child dreams of having. Present for all the important dates, always available to help, always interested in his nephews' and nieces' lives. Michael and Rachel built an even stronger family after the adversities they faced. The experience of almost losing everything taught them to value every moment together. The children grew up knowing that family isn't just who you're born with, but who chooses to stay together. They learned about forgiveness, about second chances, about how love can heal wounds that seemed impossible to mend. And whenever they told someone the story of how they met Uncle David, they began like this. "It was in a cave in the middle of nowhere when our family was lost that we found someone we didn't even know was missing." Years later, when Emma got married, she insisted that both her father and Uncle David walk her down the aisle. When the twins graduated from college, they dedicated their diplomas to their parents and the uncle who always believed in them. When Noah became a doctor, he said he wanted to help people the same way his family had helped a wounded stranger in a cave. And when Ethan, now an adult, had his own children, he told them the story of the family that got lost and found itself in a dark grotto, discovering that sometimes we need to take shelter in the darkness to find the light we were looking for. David never married, never had children of his own, but he always said he had the best family in the world because he had been chosen by them, and he chose to deserve them every single day. Michael and Rachel grew old together, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and nephews. Whenever someone asked what the secret to such a close-knit family was, they answered, The secret is to remember that family isn't about being perfect. It's about being present, about forgiving, about trying to be better, and about never giving up on each other. The cave where it all began became a special place for the family. Every year, on the anniversary of the meeting, they would have a picnic there. The children ran among the rocks, played in the nearby spring, listened to the adults tell stories of the past, and whenever they returned there, David would touch the cold wall of the grotto and whisper a prayer of gratitude. Because it was there, in the place where he thought he would end up alone and forgotten, that he found what he had always been searching for without knowing, a family that loved him not for what he had been, but for what he chose to become. End of story. And you? What did you think of this story of overcoming and forgiveness? Which part moved you the most? Leave a comment telling us which lesson impacted you the most, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other stories that touch the heart. Your participation is very important to us.